Welcome all to this final episode in this series about imperative. Today we have a very interesting topic on our hands, and that's obviously the direct object pronouns and indirect object pronouns that can be added at the very end. This has been a very researched topic. It took a lot of time and effort to cover all the specific cases needed. When we talk about imperative in Romanian, we have a very nice learning material that's in the description on Patreon and the first comment, pinned one. And if you want to help the Romanian Academy with that, please go ahead and check it out. We're going to reference it a couple of times during this video. And also there is a class that will enforce your knowledge about imperative. So I suppose we should just get into it.
Imperative. 3 out of 3. So the final episode, the final clash with imperative, one that was really needed in order to be understood properly. So the imperative, to do a little recap, is when you address someone directly. When you address someone directly in Romanian, you use a different way of conjugation, not just the second person present.
Yeah, so you don't just say faci when you ask someone to do something, you say fă.
And that applies for most verbs, as seen in episode 1. But then there are some exceptions, some irregularities and some exceptions. So there are two different kind of exceptions. In plural, for voi or dumneavoastră, you always use the second person plural from the present tense, as seen in both episode 1 and 2. However, there are some little changes when we talk about the negatives. In negatives, you always use the infinitive. So nu plus infinitive is nu face, nu da, nu primi. That's the infinitive. And all of that was covered in lessons 1 and 2. Now, there are some exceptions and some really interesting rules that happen when we cover the direct objects and indirect objects. And to actually have this conversation about the imperative, you really need to understand what a transitive verb is. A transitive verb means that it takes a direct object. Taking a direct object in English might be different than taking a direct object in Romanian, and sometimes that really is a pain in the butt. You need to take a direct object in Romanian. Think of an example such as, I don't know, a vedea, a întâlni. You can meet someone, you can see someone. That's a transitive verb. And in the imperative, a transitive verb is using the third person singular. So when a verb takes a direct object, it takes the third person singular. So the common rule we saw in episode number 1. Even though the verb is an exception or irregularity. So you see here, beau, deschide-l, vinde-l. So what we have here is all verbs. It's a table with all the verbs and their respective conjugation in the imperative. Here you have the second person singular, and here you have the second person plural. Those are all covered in video 1, what's on the sides, and video 2, what's in the middle. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Not the irregularities, but the exceptions. And these exceptions, as you can see, they take the I ending, so the to form, instead of the he or she form, which is very important to be aware of that. But now, what you need to know is that within this category, in the middle, we have transitive and intransitive verbs. And the intransitive verbs from here are shown in these light blue colors, and the transitive verbs are in the dark blue colors. And as you can see, the intransitive ones, they take the to form, while the other ones, the transitive forms, take the yel or ya form. You see how that's crazy? So bear in mind that what happens here happens for direct objects and indirect objects when you add them to the verb. This is very important, and this needs to be understood. When you take a direct or indirect object and you add it to the end of the verb, you need to use the third person because they are transitive. Yeah, so you need to use for transitive verbs the third person, and for intransitive verbs the second person. Now, what's also very interesting is that
some verbs may take two different forms, and to do that you might want to check Dex Online, because sometimes you'll see that they have two or more conjugations in the imperative.
So let's go on Dex Online, and right here avea, or maybe auzi, actually. I think auzi is a better example. So you see here aude and auzi. When you see this hyphen here, you know that needs a direct or indirect object. Yeah. So auzi is when you say auzi, ce vrei. But then aude is when you say audel or audo. Not very often. This will not happen very often, but there are some verbs, and probably auzi is the most crazy one and most important one. Depends on the frequency of how often they need to be used. So let's have a look at the actual examples. We have the imperative plus the direct object or reflexive pronouns. That's something very important to be aware of as well, because direct object transitive means that also they can be reflexive, most of them. So direct object, du la casă, take him home. Ia-o de pe masă, take it from the table. Crede-i pe cuvânt, believe them on their word, whatever. Dați-le afară, so kick them out, send them out, give them out. And with the reflexive pronoun, when the person of the verb is the same as the person of the pronoun, duceți-vă, spală-te, joacă-te, treziți-vă. Nothing too crazy happening here. Just have a look at how these endings are added with a hyphen, and obviously the pronunciation will be flowing. It will be continuous. Dați-le, crede-i, ia-o. You will not stop. You will not say ia-o. And these are the possibilities here. You have the verb plus the pronoun. You have the verb in third person, and then the pronoun, which is showing the imperative. And this is something that's very common on all Latin languages. In all Latin languages, third person is the common one. And you can find a lot of interesting things really in the PDF that's available on Patreon. And it's a 11 pages PDF excluding the cover. That's very, very, very nicely done, and it took a while to cover everything. And you have all these tables and more explanations, all the answers keys from the exercises, as well as explanations for very schematic explanations for all these direct objects and indirect objects pronouns. You have them here at page, I think it's 5 and 6. No, not 6, sorry. 4 and 5, 4 and 5. We explain all these depending on if they're affirmative, negative sentences, if you use direct object or indirect object. So coming back to this, we go to indirect objects, and indirect objects are the ones from dative. If the direct objects are the accusative ones, their indirect objects are in dative, and that's how you use them. You put them at the end as well. Explicăm, spune-i, dă-i, aduceți-le, imaginează-ți. Also reflexive pronouns, not many of them, but very important to be aware that there are some dative reflexive pronouns. Imaginează-ți, amintiți-vă, permiteți, and so on. They are also added with a hyphen, and usually the is removed, as it always happens, because it's a very, very weak vowel. And explicăm, if we look at the rule, generally the rule, you have the verb in the imperative form. For tu is usually third person, and then for voi is the voi person, for dumneavoastră also the voi person, the voi conjugation. and then an indirect object, the short indirect object, so just like mi, ci, I, ne, v, le. That's great.
And if you enjoyed this, guys, please give a like and subscribe to the channel, because we did put a lot of work into this videos, and the imperative is not an easy topic. The materials that are given away with this are also a month's worth of work, really, and we hope that you get some values out of it. If you enjoy the Romanian Academy, also please let us know in the comments below. Now let's go back
to the final and the most important, really, the one that the most difficult topic here in the imperative, adding two objects at the end. So let's look at some context here. So, am găsit inelul Andrei. Era pe masă. And someone else says, adu-il. This is something that is not really for the beginners. It's more of an intermediate thing. / intermediate advanced, maybe. To use the correct form for two direct and indirect objects. Yeah, so you have am găsit inelul and Andrea. Yeah, so I found Andrea's ring, so adu-il. Bring it and then to her. Bring it, so L is the ring and E is Andrea, so bring it to her. Now let's have another look here. Am cumpărat un cadou super pentru ziua lui Florin. E o carte nouă, dar e în format e-book. Trimite atunci pe mail, nu? So again, the direct object is at the end and the indirect object is here. So we know exactly to whom you send it and what you send, because that's really it, right? The direct object is what is used by the verb, and the indirect object is to whom it is directed. So send it over to him. Send it. Here this is a mistake. Should be send it over to him by email then, right? With to him being I and it being O. Same crossed way, yeah? So the order is always like this. It's always the indirect object first and then the direct object. So adu-nil, for example, or as you see here, adu-nil. I put them all together so you can see it's closer. So adu, the verb, ni, the indirect object, el, direct object. So bring it to us. Bring to us it. Yeah, and the forms are here. Mi, ci, I, and then for plural you can use two options. You will see ne or ni, v or vi, le or li. It really depends on if you look at this, yeah? So if you use the O versus il, for instance. So with O, N, I, and then O, this is not literal Romanian. This is what people might write in regional dialect, in regional accents, or say in regional accents, but it's normally no, not nyo. Nyo is not really literal Romanian. So when you have O as the direct object, yeah, adună, it, the key, for example, cheia, it will be no. But then when you have, I don't know, the phone, yeah, it will be adu-nil, bring it, masculine or neuter, to us. And ni is correct indirect pronoun. Now, let's do a little recap. We covered the regulars and the irregulars in the first episode. We saw how you use the third person. Then we saw in the second episode the exceptions and how some of them use the second person for the two. And then we saw today how to use all of that knowledge to put together everything with the direct objects and indirect objects. And we have a PDF, don't forget about that, it's down below, and it has all these exercises that you can see now on the screen and that you can try right now and check your knowledge in the answers key that you find in the learning exercises. Yeah, so here at the very end of this PDF you find
the answers key. Come on, please. Yeah, there you go. The answers key.
If you want more exercises and to test your knowledge properly, there's also another PDF on Patreon right now, and the class next Wednesday, time to be announced. Don't forget that there are transitive and intransitive verbs. Don't forget that you add both direct and indirect objects after the verb. Don't forget that the indirect object goes first if you have two objects. And go ahead and try these exercises. They are really cool.
Now guys, I know this hasn't been the easiest of them all, but the plan is to continue with these grammar exercises in a format that you enjoy. If you find the videos useful, if you find the PDFs useful, don't forget the learning materials are now under the Pronouns tier. So that's for $5, pounds a month. And you get access to one every month, as well as many other things. You can see all of that on Patreon right now. And I will see you on the class for Învățăcei and Philanthrope next Wednesday. Time to be announced. Alright, that's it. Thank you for watching this. The imperatives have been a mini series. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next one. La revedere!